Okay. Let me go down a little bit here with this. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. We're going to give you an update on the work that we've done to analyze the impact of tariffs on Colorado individuals and Colorado businesses. Just to be clear, this is the result of the executive order that I put out in July that really called on the great ability of the state through the Office of Economic Development, through the Budget Office, to really go deeper and analyze the impact that the current tariffs have. And of course, we know that's been a changing number. What are they? And in fact, one of the key items of this report is currently there's an effective rate of 21%, up from a rate of 3%. And I want people to really get this information in front of them so they can actually see what the impact of these tariffs are. Now, to be clear, as you know, I've long been a critic of tariffs, no matter who pursues them. That includes the first Trump administration. It includes calling out President Biden for solar tariffs. And of course, today we're analyzing the current set of tariffs. But this is all analytical work. It doesn't really have a for or anti bias. It's just how much they cost. And you really can't argue with that. It's just what you have to pay tariffs. They're a form of taxation. And it's about what they cost. So we are doing everything we can here. And I want to think about this. Oh, there it is. I have to flip it over. In July, in response to the growing harm from the tariffs, I took executive action to determine what the impact was. And of course, if there are additional steps we could take to protect Coloradan businesses and Coloradans from these tax increases, we're focused on two pieces. First, the direct impact of President Trump's tariffs, and I'll give you an update on the legal status of those as well. And second, identify any opportunities that exist to position Colorado better or protect Colorado from these trade wars. Today, I'm going to share the report that our Office of State Planning and Budget put together on the tariffs. It's available online as well. There's an executive summary and a full report. And it really is consistent with what we've been hearing qualitatively. This is, again, the numbers, but I've been hearing in many roundtables from meeting with many businesses just the great frustration from ranchers and farmers to small businesses to retail to families shopping for back-to-school items about the impact of tariffs. And of course, on the business side, again, also about the uncertainty of tariffs going forward, knowing that this could get worse. And part of the modeling actually shows if there's an escalation, how much worse it can get. Today, Coloradans are paying 7 times more in tariff taxes than 1 year ago, with the effective rate skyrocketing from 3% to 21% today. The last time America faced such high tariffs was over a century ago in 1910. Now think about that for a moment. In 1910, the Model T was a brand new invention rolling off the manufacturing line. Horses were the main way people got around. Here we are today. We have Waymo driverless cars coming to Denver. And unfortunately, we are now facing the same level of tariffs that we faced over a century ago. We've come a long way in the last 115 years, and yet we're thrust backwards towards a less prosperous and successful time with this archaic tariff policy. Tariffs are really self-inflicted wounds on the economy. You'll see some of the numbers in this report. The industries hardest hit are those that in many ways power our state, including energy, literally powering our state, agriculture, construction, aerospace. Businesses that are hit with tariffs have to drive up costs for consumers, raise prices, might lay people off. We've had companies delay investment in the United States because they can't get the parts and supplies they need for manufacturing, and they don't even know if they can competitively export to a global market from the United States because of reciprocal tariffs, scaling back capital investments, and some combination of all those. But one thing is clear, everyone loses a trade war. Everyone loses a tariff war. It's a race to the bottom. Today, it's been estimated that over 20% of the tariff costs are being passed along directly to consumer. That number is expected to increase by 50% as businesses run through their pre-tariff inventories. Remember, knowing tariffs were coming, a lot of companies stocked up early, but that they are now running out of what they were able to get pre-tariff. And so a lot more of that 21% is passed along directly to consumers as time goes by. We estimate the cost passed on to Coloradans from tariffs just to live our daily lives is $600 million more. Could be a new fridge, it costs more. A new car or microwave, it costs more. And we're already feeling the pain. And increased tariff costs on building materials like lumber, steel, aluminum, copper are raising costs for new housing. And they have an upward pressure, sadly, on energy bills as well as we build new capacity for data centers and electric vehicles and a lot of that other work. But building new housing relies directly on materials that are hit hard by tariffs, driving up costs at a time when, of course, our state goal and the goal of our people is to make it easier to build homes, and the legislature has taken steps like condo liability reform, other areas that cut red tape and make it easier to build housing, but that is unfortunately counterbalanced by higher material costs on a wide range of construction materials. Same is true with energy bills. Our goal of saving people money on energy bills is threatened by tariffs that increase costs that are passed along to consumers directly, materials needed to power our homes and businesses. We're also seeing the harm that tariffs are inflicting on core industries that drive our economy, detailed in this report. Our single biggest export is the agriculture sector. That's 1 in 4 export dollars, and in the first half of the year, meat exports fell by 40 million relative to the year before. And this is at a time when beef prices are higher than ever before. So it's very hard to go down. And yet beef exports decreased by $40 million. OSPB estimates that this is already leading to 265 jobs lost and significantly reduced economic activity. Similarly, Colorado's nation-leading aerospace sector, our very pride of Colorado, we're leading aerospace state, particularly in the space domain, is also a very global industry, and we're facing steep tariffs, and particularly we're affected by imports from Switzerland, a key trading partner for aerospace materials that cannot be sourced elsewhere. Last year, Colorado imported $741 million in products needed for aerospace that now face a 39% tariff rate from Switzerland. Lower trade activity has already been estimated to lead to hundreds of jobs lost and over $61 million lost just in the aerospace sector. These are more than numbers, and I just encourage everybody to look at the full report because it is sector by sector, and it also goes down into regions across our state. I want to thank Bryce Cook and the OSPD team for helping to spearhead a really across government sector effort to put this together. We do have Bryce Cook available for technical questions on the report. It took a great team of workers to put this together. And it touches so many businesses we often don't even think about. Let's take our craft brewing industry as an example. Our iconic breweries are threatened by tariffs too. I spoke with a craft brewer who sources their barley from Canada. There's brewers who source glass bottles from Canada, aluminum from other countries. And a lot of them are worried that the market can't support a major price increase for beer, and that tariffs could drive them out of business and, of course, force Coloradans to pay more at craft breweries. This whiplash effect is harmful to businesses and individuals. And I also want to highlight, obviously, we just came out of a special session. This also impacts the public sector, the state budget. The analysis that we're sharing here today shows that tariff escalation could not only push the state into recession, but it cost the state budget as much as $800 million in lost revenue within 2 years, and it increased costs. The current tariffs alone are expected to increase costs by $110 million in education alone. So that means that even while we're funding schools more than ever before, the cost of everyday items that schools buy goes up, just as the cost for parents goes up and the cost for businesses go up. And we are very seriously taking our responsibility to put every taxpayer dollar to the best use possible, and tariffs fly in the face of that. So, we are pushing back, as you know. We are currently engaged in a lawsuit with the federal government over tariffs. First and foremost, we're going to be sending this report to all 10 members of our congressional delegation and the White House to really hope that Congress shows a spine and pushes back on these costly tax increases through tariffs, and, of course, trying to change the mind of the President and the White House. In addition, we're, of course, in the courtrooms. There was a victory recently. It now has until October 14th, I believe, for the Supreme Court to the side, but not all the tariffs are in that bag, by the way. These are the emergency tariffs, a high percentage of them. One of the key things in the report you'll see is, because a lot of it'll be a good resource for people, is what are the current effective tariffs against every country. And so we have on a table in the end there, we have all the different countries listed. So like Bangladesh 20%, Sri Lanka 20%, Taiwan 20%, Brazil 50%. Why? Who knows why that's so high, but obviously devastating for anything being exported to Brazil, imported from Brazil. So Switzerland 39%. So they're all listed there. So you can look at, that's where they are today. We'll stay tuned for updates, right? But this pending court case, if it goes the right way, will negate some but not all of these tariffs, specifically some of the ones that were revoked under emergency authority, specifically some of the ones against Mexico and Canada, our two most important and economically consequential trade partners. So I'm very hopeful that that case will limit the president's power in that area, but it doesn't end the trade war. It doesn't end the president's apparent affinity for these huge tax increases if the Supreme Court rules the right way, although it would be a major step forward for our economy and for Colorado. And we will work on additional analysis if there's updates like that. So if there's something, I don't think we're going to necessarily do the whole analysis just when there's one trade deal with one country, but if there's a whole swath of them thrown out or a change, we can update this in a dynamic basis, because this is an important document for a number of reasons. One, it's important to update, again, our congressional delegation to push back. We also need it for planning, because it factors into our state budget planning. It factors into being fiscally responsible at the state level. And so we are going to make sure this document lives and breathes. But frankly, from groceries to housing, Coloradans are already paying the price for the president's trade war. It'll get even worse. This new analysis adds numbers and specific data to our toolkit to better understand what tariffs are doing to Colorado's economy in particular. There's national groups that are working on this issue nationally. In Colorado, we're going to push back every way we can, legally, politically, to fight for our consumers, to fight for our businesses, to fight for prosperity and growth. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy Director of our Office of Economic Development and International Trade, which is really our front line in working with companies that are investing in Colorado, looking to invest in Colorado, to share a little bit about what he's been hearing. Jeff Kraft.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning. I am Jeff Kraft, Deputy Director of the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, referred to as OEDIT. At our office, our goal is to empower Colorado businesses to thrive in our economy, to keep our state the best place to start and grow a business. And over the past many months, we've seen how tariffs are creating uncertainty, confusion, and driving up the cost of doing business across the state. The report that the Governor just released today and authored by the Office of State Planning and Budgeting makes us better equipped to understand the full scope of these tariff impacts as we work to find innovative ways to support Colorado businesses and help them avoid the brunt of tariff harm. As the Governor noted, the effective tariff rate in Colorado has increased sevenfold from just a year ago to 21% from 3%. And some of our state's leading advanced industries, exporters, and primary employers are most exposed. Identifying strategies to help industries navigate tariffs is essential to maintain Colorado's economy. When businesses face high tariffs and the associated uncertainty and confusion, they have difficult choices. Companies are forced to either pass costs on to consumers, which raises prices and can reduce revenue and obviously hurts the consumer, or they have to shift funds to cover the cost of the tariffs internally. If they do that, it can lead to significant reductions in research and development, reduced employment, job cuts, and over time, Colorado and the U.S. Are faced with having goods and services that risk becoming less competitive because of these higher prices and the lack of resources to develop innovative new next-gen offerings. Coloradans miss out on good-paying jobs, and as a nation, it becomes harder to maintain our competitive edge. Now, Colorado is home to 715,000 small businesses. They employ 1.1 million workers, nearly half of our state's workforce. And these businesses play a particularly important role in rural Colorado. They're economic drivers there. And they are least well equipped to handle the confusion and uncertainty associated with tariffs and changing tariffs. So their owners face agonizing choices. Do they lay someone off? Do they cut salaries? Do they cut their own salary? Do they go out of business? And these are the conversations we're hearing every day as we work throughout Colorado. Smaller rural communities, their impacts are deeply felt by small business challenges. And finally, I just want to say we can't ignore the effect of these tariffs on international perception and its impact on the Colorado economy. The longer tariffs are in place, the less likely international consumers may be to buy American and Colorado products, including tourism. International visitors make up a critical and important part of our tourism industry. That industry employs 188,000 people in Colorado. International visitors stay longer and spend more while they're here. And if their visits to the U.S. decline, this will have a significant impact on our state. We see a double effect. There's obviously fewer trips from these important international visitors, but states need to become more competitive to attract the existing domestic traveler market. So that raises uncertainty and challenges, and that's just one example of a key sector. The governor alluded to how many different sectors are impacted by rising tariffs. Put simply, as the governor stated, the impacts of tariffs are widespread and still developing. Today's report underscores the need for creative solutions so we can leverage existing resources in a low-budget environment to help Colorado businesses adapt to these tariffs and protect our dynamic economy.
Thank you. Happy to take some questions.
Yeah, you mentioned a sevenfold increase in tariffs. Do you have an overall number on the impact on the economy?
Yes, so we have a number on the overall impact of the current as well as if they escalate. I'll go to Bryce Cook for that.
Thank you, Governor. So in the full report, you can see there's an economic section that includes GDP and gross state product. And in that, you can see that in the first scenario, which is if we maintained 2024 tariffs, we would basically set around 2% growth for both the U.S. and for Colorado. However, under the current tariff structure, we're expecting the GDP to slow down to 1.6% this year for both Colorado and the U.S., and slow down further to 0.7% growth for the U.S. and 0.8% for Colorado. And it gets even worse in the escalatory scenario, where things continue to unravel. And under that scenario, we do expect a recession both nationally and locally.
So, and the way I look at it, Marianne, is whatever, there's a lot of factors that affect your GDP growth. So I think it's 2%. But whatever that number is, the tariffs decrease it by, I think, in this case, 0.6% at the current level. And if it escalates,
In 2026, it's going to decrease it by almost 2%.
2%. So that means if you have 2.5% economic growth, you then have 0.5% economic growth. If you have 1% economic growth, which is already, let's say, a minor recession, then you go to negative 1.5%, which is a major recession. So no one is saying it's the only factor that affects growth, but it reduces any economic growth. And so if you have small economic growth, it could push you to negative economic growth, or it could prevent a strong economy and instead have a stagnant or a mediocre economy. And that's what these numbers show.
Yeah, this is just like a clarifying question. So when you say a sevenfold increase in
Yeah.
the tariff rate, is that the average of all?
Yeah, that's from 3 to 21%. So we were at 3% a year ago, and now we're at 21% fully loaded average rate right now for what stands. So that's the sevenfold increase. Sorry?
For all the current tariffs?
All the current ones, moment in time, yeah, a shot, a moment in time. That's exactly where we are today. Sevenfold increase, highest since 1910.
You mentioned kind of pushing back locally, legally, talk about leveraging
Mm-hmm.
resources. What specifically can the state do to support small businesses in this economic scenario?
Well, again, certainly pushing back every way we can. I'm going to be sending the report to our members of Congress to inform their discussion to the White House. We are in the courtrooms, and that could be the Supreme Court as soon as early October. And in addition, we're trying to push back on the reputational damage to our country. Jeff Kraft mentioned tourism as an example. Not necessarily as directly a sector impacted by tariffs, but it's one of those secondary sectors that we have been very focused on sort of winning the hearts and minds of folks, particularly Canada and Mexico, our two biggest source countries of tourists. We have a Canada, Colorado Friendship Day, Mexico, Colorado Friendship Day. I went to British Columbia, been on Canadian TV. So we're really focused on maintaining that positive brand image of Colorado, that we're welcoming to people from across the world who want to enjoy our world-class ski areas, our mountains, our cultural attractions, and our cities.
Governor, you're calling on Congress to grow its spine. So can you explain a little bit more about what specifically Congress can do and what you would like them to do?
Absolutely. Again, in the courts, the argument is the president already exceeded his authority for some of these tariffs, not all. I hope that prevails. But Congress absolutely can limit the authority of the president. They can do that in the spending bills that they're considering going through right now. They can restrict the ability of any president to unilaterally impose tariffs, particularly under the circumstances that President Trump cited, emergency authority. Congress can do that as part of the appropriations bills that are going through Congress now, and I would encourage Congress to include that language that prevents a president unilaterally from starting and escalating these kinds of trade wars that damage our economy.
You mentioned this report sort of weighing in and factoring into budget planning.
Yeah.
Is that for future years, or did this report sort of play a role into the budget changes made last week?
Yeah, the ones, the retroactive ones for the current year were because of HR 1's impact on the current year. We will be, OSPB will be coming up with their forecast September 22nd, and it will include data that came out of this that will help inform that regarding the impact of tariffs, both on state revenue as well as on state costs. So like construction materials for highways, all of that costs more. So it will hit state revenue, which may or may not matter as much if we're above Tabor. If they're above Tabor, then that tariff costs people their refunds, their Tabor refunds. If we're below Tabor, it costs state investment. But then it also impacts the cost side for things that the state does, whether it's education or highways. All are more costly because the state's not exempt from paying those tariffs just because those items are being imported for public use.
How are you planning for this estimated recession?
Yeah, to be clear, as I said, like there are many factors that affect the economy. So you could, whether there's a recession or not, doesn't solely depend on tariffs. What it does, though, is it significantly decreases the economic growth rate. So let's say you have very strong growth, and otherwise we'd be at 3.5%. Then we would just be at, under 2% because of the tariffs, which is a fairly stagnant economy. If you're at 2%, you go to 0 or close to 0. So there are many factors that impact the economy, but tariffs alone are going to be a significant hit to the economy, costing us 1 to 2% growth and raising costs on everyday items by up to 21%.
You had mentioned that in ag, and I hope I got this right, 1 in 4 dollars have been lost because of tariffs.
No, I think it's 25. About 25% of our exports are ag. Is that that's what about a quarter of our exports are ag, and then I cited a dollar amount for the decrease in beef exports, which is extraordinary considering high beef prices.
How much of that is to our number 1 trading partners in ag, which are Canada and Mexico?
We can see we should have that, but they are our biggest trading partners. They're always going to be a big. I don't know if you have it offhand or you can get that to us. Sure, go ahead, Bryce.
Thanks, Governor. So with Canada and Mexico, who are our largest trading partners there, the impact has been limited because 90% of the goods, approximately, are still under the USMCA exempt status. But there are significant decreases in, say, beef exports to China because of the trade war there. So it does depend on the country you're talking about and the extent to which tariffs have increased.
Yeah, Governor, you alluded to this already a bit, but on housing, after you've made lowering the cost of housing a priority, the legislature has taken actions to do that. Do you worry that the impact on the construction industry are going to undermine or essentially offset any efforts to lower housing costs?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that any costs associated with tariffs are directly incorporated in the construction costs and the housing costs. So housing takes materials to build. Those materials are sourced across the world. And when you increase housing costs by, what's the percent of housing costs or construction? It's like 4?
I think it's like 4 to 6%.
Yeah, 4 to 6. Yeah, so it directly increases the cost of construction by 4 to 6%. And of course, we're doing everything we can to reduce the cost of construction as a state, and this works counter to that goal. It makes housing less affordable in Colorado. Hoy compartimos un informe sobre los impactos de los aranceles impuestos por el presidente Trump, que está aumentando los costos para las empresas de Colorado. Los habitantes de Colorado están pagando 7 veces más en aranceles que hace un año, con tasas que se han disparado del 3% el año pasado al 21% actual hoy. Sorry, that was requested for our Spanish friends. Anything else? Thanks, everybody.